Good afternoon and welcome back to Stories with Don, reading Robin Hood. We are getting pretty close to the end. I think there's only a couple chapters left. Today we're on chapter 23 and it is entitled King Richard Comes to Sherwood. After a time, King Richard came to Nottingham in hopes of meeting with Robin Hood. He marched into the forest attended by a strong body of knights and expected to encounter the outlaws very shortly. But he marched hither and thither and found the forest empty and silent as far as all human life was concerned. He saw the deer bounding over the greensward, the great oaks waving their boughs in the wind, but never a glimpse had he of the stout fellows in Lincoln Green. Day after day passed, and Richard traversed the glade and woodland all in vain. He seemed no nearer to coming to speech with Robin Hood than he had been when seated in his palace in London. "By my halidom," said Richard, "but this is passing strange. I was told that these fellows so haunted the forest roads that a beggar could not pass unnoticed, and yet I see naught of them." The reason was simple. It was Robin's own doing that Richard saw nothing of the outlaws. Robin loved his king and was not willing that a hand should be raised against Richard and his followers, so he gave strict orders that his men should keep out of the way. He was faithfully obeyed. Time and again the outlaws lay hidden in brake and shaw as the glittering train swept by, and smiled to see the king and his lords pass by within easy bowshot, but never an arrow was placed on string and never a sign was given of their presence. One day Richard was lamenting that Robin Hood seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth, when an old forester who stood by his knee smiled and said, "Nay, my liege lord, he is in the forest as surely as I stand here, and ye may easily see him." "How?" demanded the king. "Why, my lord, you go in armor and with train of soldiery. Think ye that the outlaws will set green jacket against coat of mail? I trow not, but should ye go in the guise of a fat abbot, whose mails would yield rich plunder on rifling, I warrant me that Robin would appear fast enough." King Richard saw the force of those words and nodded gaily. The adventure was just to his liking, and the very next day he slipped secretly from Nottingham in abbot's dress, with half a dozen followers, dressed as monks, and a couple led horses heavily laden with stores and baggage. Sure enough, he had not gone 3 miles into the forest before he was called upon to stand. At a bend of the way, a man, handsomely dressed in Lincoln green, bow in hand and quiver full of shafts, stepped from a thicket and laid his hand on the abbot's bridle. His sunburned face and bright eyes were full of amusement as he said in courteous tones, "Sir Abbot, by your leave, you must bide a while with me and my men." He waved his bow, and at once a score of hardy, active fellows burst from the bushes and surrounded the party. At their head was a huge yeoman, grinning at the sight of this rich haul, and on him Richard's eyes were at once fixed. It was easy to know Little John again. Then Richard looked at the first man and knew that Robin Hood stood before him at last. "And who are ye who bear my way?" asked the king quietly in his deep, rich voice. Robin Hood started slightly at hearing these commanding tones and looked keenly at the stranger. But the great hat and hood which Richard wore quite concealed his features. Then Robin replied, "We be yeomen of this forest. We dwell neath the greenwood tree, and we live on our king's deer, for we have no other means. But ye have churches, rents, and gold. Give us your plenty for Saint Charity's sake." "In truth, good yeoman," said Richard, "I have brought to the greenwood no more than 40 pounds. For I have lain at Nottingham with the king's court and spent much on feasting these great lordings who follow the king." "Art thou a true follower of the king?" asked Robin. "That I am," replied Richard. "I love him with all my heart." "Then for that speech, thou saveth half thy money, Sir Abbot, said Robin. Give me 20 pounds for my men, and keep the other 20 for thine own needs. Gramercy, said Richard, but thou art a very gentle yeoman, and thou must know that my errand into this forest is to search for thee, and bid thee come to Nottingham and meet the king. He is full of longing to see thee, and he sends thee a safe conduct, and here is his seal to assure thee. Richard now drew the royal seal from beneath his cloak and showed it. Robin bent his knee in respect before it, and every yeoman pulled off his hood. Why, said Richard in surprise, I was told, yeoman, that thou wert a disloyal fellow who set the king's law at naught and did all kinds of evil. Nay, Sir Abbot, replied Robin, I hate unjust sheriffs and greedy monks, but I love no man in all the world so well as I do my gallant king, and if thou art his messenger and bear his seal, I make thee welcome to the greenwood, and today thou shalt dine with me for the love of our king under my trysting tree. So Robin led the abbot's horse until they came to the camp, pitched under a mighty oak, which was the trysting place of Robin and his men. Here Robin sounded his horn, and his men ran to the spot, company by company, bright, brisk, alert fellows, well dressed and well armed, and every man bent his knee in courtesy to his leader. By my faith, thought Richard, these fellows are more at his bidding than mine men be at mine. Swiftly a fine feast was made ready, and the disguised abbot and his men were set down to it. Richard was hungry, and he ate and drank and enjoyed the noble fare of the greenwood to the full. When the dinner was over, Robin Hood said to his guest, Now ye shall see what life we lead in the forest, that ye may report our doing to my lord the king. So the yeomen fell to their sports, wrestling, playing with the quarterstaff, and above all, archery, the dearest sport of all. At the foot of the glade they set up a long slender wand, and Robin bid his man split it with their arrows. Another mark was a rose garland through which the arrows had to be shot without touching leaf or flower. By my faith, cried Richard, but those marks are set full 50 paces too far away, good yeoman. Nay, smiled Robin, of what use to practice at an easy mark? In aye faith, should any man miss, he must take a stout buffet on the ear in penalty. But does not such an exchange of buffets breed ill will among them? Asked Richard. Content you, Sir Abbot, but that is foreseen and guarded against. Every man receives his buffet at the hand of our father confessor, Friar Tuck, and the punishment received from the church must ever be taken in meek obedience. Stand forth, Friar Tuck, for shooting is about to begin. Friar Tuck came up from the spot where he had just been polishing off a huge venison pasty, and murmured a greeting in very bad Latin to the captive abbot, who replied with the utmost correctness. And dost thou smite them in earnest, brother? Demanded Richard. Aye, verily I do, replied Tuck, his small, bright black eyes rolling mischievously above the forest of black beard which almost swallowed his face. For if our men shoot carelessly, we are like to be undone, so that the bad shot must be paid for by a good blow. The shooting now began, and Richard marveled at the wonderful skill shown by yeoman after yeoman. The wand was split or the arrow threaded the garland with astonishing precision. But at last, Much was so unlucky as to miss the wand. He was at once forced to stand up before the powerful friar, who sent him rolling with one swing of a brawny arm. Then Little John, to the wonder of all, failed at the garland, and even the giant was now felled by the arm of Friar Tuck. The yeoman roared with laughter to see the huge lieutenant measure his length on the greensward, and then a still louder shout arose, for Robin Hood himself now missed the garland and must pay the penalty of failure. If I must be chastised by the church, laughed Robin, let me make my choice. Sir Abbot, serve me out my blow. Nay, master, protested Friar Tuck, that is to slip aside. What can yonder fat lazy abbot do? His blows were no more than a tap with a bulrush. Say not so, friar, cried Richard. Thou art not today the only man in a churchman's gown who hath a little pith in his arm. A fig for the pith in thy arm, said Tuck scornfully. I would take a cuff from thee and scarce know what had tickled my ear. And wouldst thou so? Cried the supposed abbot, leaping from his seat. Then here is a fair offer, friar. I will abide thy blow if thou wilt abide mine. And I have to first blow? Cried the stout friar eagerly. Yes, said the other. Agreed, agreed, roared Tuck joyously. By the mass, if I do not save my own head, then e'en let it sting. Thus promising that the abbot would be struck helplessly down, Friar Tuck rolled up the sleeve of his gown and showed a brawny arm, on which the muscles worked in knots and ridges as he closed and unclosed his huge fist. The yeoman formed an eager ring, and the abbot stepped quietly into it and stood erect to receive the friar's blow. By Our Lady, murmured Robin to himself, but yonder abbot is a goodly figure. Head and shoulders above the burly figure of the friar abbot, the stately form of the Lionheart, and when rose the stately form of the Lionheart, and when Friar Tuck loosed at him with a terrific blow which would have hurled a heavy man flying, naught was disturbed save the abbot's great hat, which flew 20 yards away. The yeoman raised a great shout of applause in honor of the first man who had ever held his own against Tuck's mighty fist, and then the abbot said quietly, My turn now, brother. And Tuck, without a word, stood manfully forth to take the returned cuft. But what a shout was raised when the abbot, folding up his sleeve, bared a muscular arm, and dealt Friar Tuck such a blow that the burly priest went head over heels as if a thunderbolt had smitten him. Every man who had felt the weight of the briar's fist shouted with glee at thus seeing him paid back in his own coin, but Robin Hood did not laugh. An evil choice I have made, he thought. This stranger is a more terrible boxer than our own Tuck. But he stood forth to take his cuff, and received so hearty a one that Robin measured his full length on the greensward, and the abbot's hood flew back as he struck. In truth, Sir Abbot, thou art a stalwart fellow, said Robin, getting up and rubbing his head ruefully. There is more pith in thy arm than I ever dreamed a churchman had. He looked up into the abbot's face and wondered if this man could be a churchman, for never had Robin seen an abbot with such a bold, handsome face, with such bright, sparkling, honest blue eyes, with such a merry smile, so merry and gay that Robin could not help smiling in sympathy. But Robin's wonder was turned to astonishment when he saw Little John fling himself on his knees before the abbot and call out, Pardon, sire, pardon! Pardon for what, Little John? Cried Robin. Thou hast had thy cuff. There is no need to fear that this abbot of the mighty arm will deal thee a second blow. But again Little John cried, Pardon, sire, pardon! And at the next moment the wonder of the onlookers grew, for their good friend Sir Richard of the Lee now rode down to the glade to join them. And no sooner did he see the abbot than he hasted to leap down from his horse and fall on his knees beside Little John. Here's a picture of them kneeling before the abbot. Is there any service a loyal knight may render to his king? Said Sir Richard. If there be, I am at your majesty's command. The king! Cried Robin in wonder. The king! Echoed the yeoman, and everyone bent the knee before the stately figure in abbot's weeds. Mercy, sire, cried Robin Hood to the king. Mercy for my men and me I crave under our trysting tree. Mercy you shall have, said Richard, smiling, for surely such a brave band of yeomen were better employed in my service than exiled in the forest here. What say you, Robin Hood? Will you be my man and serve me henceforth? I will, my lord, cried Robin Hood. I am your man from this day and forever. And his men echoed the words, and with a loud shout gave their fealty to Richard of the Lionheart. Hast thou any green cloth to spare, Robin? Asked the king. For by my faith I would rather wear a forest jerkin than these dark weeds. And he threw his abbot's cloak aside. Plenty, my liege lord, replied Robin Hood, and hastened to dress the king and his followers in Lincoln green, such as the outlaws wore. In this guise they returned to Nottingham, the king and Robin Hood and the whole band of outlaws. But when the people of Nottingham saw this green band of men in green drawing near to the town, they were greatly frightened. The king is slain, they said, and here come the outlaws to seize the town and kill us all. So at first they fled in dismay. But soon the truth was discovered, and then all crowded to see the king enter the town in triumph among the forest outlaws. Outlaws no longer, but freemen who could smile in the face of the sheriff. And I promised you, the sheriff looked on very sourly at sight of this friendship of King Richard for Robin Hood. That night there was a merry banquet in Nottingham town, for the king now feasted the outlaws as they had feasted him, and there was the best of good cheer, and Allan a Dale sang his gayest songs and struck the sweetest strains on his harp, so that Richard was full of delight, and swore that for good fellowship and mirth and music his new followers surpassed all. Before Richard went back to London, there was a gay wedding in St. Mary's Church, and Maid Marian became the bride of Robin Hood. The king graced the wedding with his presence, and raised Robin to the rank of a noble, with the title of Earl of Huntingdon. And so Robin Hood entered the service of the Lionheart, and left the greenwood glades of Sherwood, as he thought, forever. And there ends that chapter. So we still have one more chapter to go before the end of the book, although that would be an easy place to end. But there is still one more to go in the adventures of Robin Hood. So I hope you have enjoyed this book. I'm trying to decide what our next book will be, so I'll begin that, I guess, on Friday. And we will see what it will be. So in the meantime, I hope you stay well. May God bless you. Goodbye.